My wedding day became a war zone when a royal guard burst in to tell me I was a princess, only to be intercepted by my own aunt, who apparently preferred usurpers to my husband. The air in the grand ballroom was thick with the scent of lilies and simmering resentment. I remember every excruciating detail, from the way the crystal chandelier refracted the harsh, overhead lights to the precise angle the silk of my dress draped over my ankles. Today was supposed to be the pinnacle of my life, the day I officially became Clara Sterling, bonded to the man I adored, Liam. Instead, it felt like a meticulously staged performance where I was the only one who didn't know the script. Liam, bless his earnest, oblivious heart, was downstairs greeting his side of the family, the incredibly warm, slightly overbearing, but genuinely loving O'Connells. They treated me like a long-lost daughter. My side, however, the illustrious, financially dominant Ashworth clan, treated me like an inconvenient smudge on their expensive imported marble floors. Aunt Beatrice, whose face seemed perpetually set in a mold of disapproval, drifted past me as I nervously adjusted my veil in the hallway mirror. "Clara, darling," she purred, not quite meeting my eyes, "are you sure about this venue? It's quaint. One does hope the champagne isn't imported from anything less than a first-growth vineyard. Remember what Mother always said about appearances." Mother. My actual mother, Eleanor Ashworth, was the queen of passive aggression. She stood near the receiving line, draped in emerald green that clashed violently with my ivory gown, talking animatedly to a solicitor I vaguely recognized. When I tried to approach her for a quick hug before the ceremony, she held up a manicured hand. "5 minutes, dear. We need to confirm the trust distribution before the vows are exchanged. Legalities first, sentimentality later." Sentimentality. That was something the Ashworths had purged from their genetics centuries ago. I'd always been the family oddity. Liam wasn't rich. He was an architect working on sustainable housing projects, a far cry from the hedge funds and inherited real estate the Ashworths dealt in. My father, bless his soul, had died young, leaving me under Eleanor's increasingly icy tutelage. They tolerated me only because my late father was the last true male heir in their direct line, a useful placeholder until I made a suitably lucrative match. Liam clearly did not qualify. The ceremony itself was a blur of forced smiles. Liam's eyes were alight with adoration. He didn't notice the 2 empty chairs reserved for the Ashworth matriarch and patriarch, who had suddenly decided an urgent dental appointment required their immediate attention across the continent. When the officiant asked for any objections, I held my breath, convinced Aunt Beatrice would stand up and declare my borrowed wedding shoes were synthetics. But silence reigned. The reception began. The O'Connells offered toasts filled with stories of Liam's childhood kindness and Clara's infectious laugh. They were beautiful, genuine tributes. Then came the Ashworths' turn. Uncle Marcus, Eleanor's brother, stepped up, tapping the microphone impatiently. He didn't raise a toast to us. He raised one to the Ashworth legacy. "We gather today to celebrate the union of 2 people," Marcus announced, his voice booming, laced with patronizing tones. "And while we welcome Liam into our extended circle, a circle, I might add, that values stability and lineage above fleeting emotional attachment, we must remember where true influence lies. Clara, my dear niece, you have chosen a path less profitable. We hope you remember your responsibilities to the family name, even in this new endeavor. Let us hope that Liam can provide the support our Clara requires." It wasn't a toast. It was a public demotion. Liam looked crushed. I felt the familiar hot sting of tears, but I swallowed them down. I gave Marcus a tight, practiced smile, the one I'd perfected since childhood, the smile that says, "I hear you, and I hate you." As the dinner service began, the segregation became even more pronounced. The O'Connells were laughing at the head table with Liam. The Ashworths clustered at the back tables, speaking in hushed, judgmental tones, pointedly ignoring my attempts to join them. Eleanor was on her phone again, making sharp, dismissive gestures. I felt utterly alone, married but still an outcast in my own bloodline. Liam reached across the table and squeezed my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "Don't let them get to you, Clara. We have forever now. They don't matter." I managed a weak smile. "You're right, they don't. But they did matter. They always had. They controlled the narrative, the money, the respectability I craved, but was never truly given." Just as the DJ queued up the first dance, Liam pulled me onto the floor. The music started, a beautiful, slightly melancholic acoustic number. We swayed, and for a fleeting moment, nothing else existed. The room melted away. It was just us. Then, through the haze of romance and exhaustion, I saw a figure approach the edge of the dance floor. He wasn't on the guest list. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a uniform I vaguely recognized from old documentaries. Dark blue, accented with silver braid, and a crest I couldn't quite place. He looked like he had walked straight out of a history book, radiating an authority that made even Uncle Marcus straighten his tie nervously. The man's eyes scanned the room, ignoring the newlyweds entirely until they locked onto me. He strode purposefully toward us, cutting through the happy crowd as if they were made of tissue paper. He stopped directly in front of Liam and me, causing the music to seem suddenly too loud, too intrusive. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He simply looked at me, Clara Sterling, the ridiculed bride, and spoke in a low, resonant voice that cut through the music like a gunshot, addressing me in a language I hadn't heard spoken aloud since I was 4 years old, a language only my deceased father and I had ever shared. "Your Royal Highness," he intoned, his gaze unwavering. My apologies for the late arrival, but the journey was complex. His Majesty King Theron V requires your immediate presence. The Regency Council has convened regarding the security of the Kingdom of Eldoria. The silence that followed the man's declaration was absolute, a vacuum sucking all the air and light from the ballroom. Liam froze mid-sway, his arm still loosely around my waist, his expression shifting from joyful husband to confused, slightly alarmed bystander. The Ashworths, clustered near the dessert table, stopped mid-sip of their champagne. Even Aunt Beatrice looked momentarily stunned, her mouth hanging slightly ajar as she stared at the messenger. "Excuse me?" Liam finally managed, his voice tight. He stepped slightly in front of me, instinctively protective. "I think there's been a mistake. This is Clara Sterling, my wife. She's marrying me today, not attending some historical reenactment." The man in uniform didn't even glance at Liam. His focus remained entirely on me, assessing, demanding. The crest on his shoulder, a stylized silver griffin clutching a sapphire, seemed to pulse under the harsh lights. Eldoria. The name hit me like a physical blow, a word I had deliberately buried beneath layers of normalcy and Ashworth expectations for 2 decades. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving my skin cold and clammy beneath the expensive lace of my gown. "You must have the wrong person," I whispered, the sound frail and thin against the weight of the moment. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Clara Ashworth's daughter. I grew up in Connecticut. "You are Princess Clarissa Ilara of the House Viridian," the emissary stated, his tone brooking no argument. He reached inside his perfectly tailored coat and produced a heavy, folded document sealed with dark crimson wax, bearing the same griffin crest. "I am Commander Rhys of the Royal Guard. Your father, the late King Theron IV, designated you as his sole direct heir upon his unfortunate passing. We've been searching discreetly for 17 years, Your Highness." 17 years. That was the year my father died, the year my mother, Eleanor, had suddenly become desperately rich and utterly cold. The years she had drilled into me the importance of quiet anonymity, of never drawing attention to the strange, infrequent gifts that arrived in unmarked wooden crates, or the strange, thick history books hidden in my father's study, filled with maps of impossibly green islands and crowned rulers. A sharp, almost feral sound escaped my mother, Eleanor, from across the room. She bolted upright from her chair, abandoning her conversation with the solicitor. Her emerald dress flashed as she ran toward the dance floor, her composure entirely shattered. "Stop this at once!" Eleanor shrieked, sounding less like a respected matriarch and more like a cornered animal. She shoved past Liam, her hand shooting out to grab my arm with surprising strength. "Rhys, you idiot! You were told to wait. You will ruin everything." Rhys smoothly detached my arm from Eleanor's grasp, his movement economical and powerful. He turned his stern gaze on Eleanor. "Madam, your deception has run its course. The Crown's business supersedes petty terrestrial squabbles." Petty terrestrial squabbles? Liam looked utterly lost, staring from his bride to the uniformed stranger, to my increasingly frantic mother, who was now pleading with the guardsman. "Eleanor, what is happening?" Liam asked, his voice trembling with betrayal. "Who is this man? What is Eldoria?" Eleanor ignored Liam completely, her eyes fixed on me, filled with a venomous desperation I had never witnessed. "Clara, listen to me. You are not going anywhere. You are marrying Liam. You belong here. That life, it's barbaric. It's dangerous, and it's not yours anymore. Your father made a choice, and I protected you from it." The word protected hung in the air, thick with implication. Protected or imprisoned? My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Liam, his face etched with confusion and dawning horror. I looked at my mother, the woman who claimed to love me but had spent my life building a cage of expectation. And then I looked at Rhys, the King's Guard, holding the very tangible proof of a destiny I never knew existed. "Rhys," I managed, my voice finding a surprising new timbre, firm, steady, almost commanding. I finally let myself hear the echo of the language he used, the cadence of royalty. "If I am who you say I am, what is the immediate threat to the kingdom that requires my presence now?" Rhys's professional mask cracked slightly, revealing a flicker of grim urgency. He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a near whisper, though the gravity of his words seemed to command the attention of the entire room. "Your Highness, that is why Commander Gentry was delayed. We intercepted the coded transmission hours ago. While you were preparing for your nuptials, the citadel fell. The usurper has claimed the throne. King Theron V, your uncle, was executed at dawn, and their first order of business, after securing the royal treasury, was issuing a formal request for the extradition of the last known member of the Viridian line. You." Liam gasped. Eleanor let out a strangled cry and stumbled backward. "They know where you are," Rhys finished, gripping the hilt of his ceremonial sword. And they are already on their way here. We intercepted their scouting unit crossing international waters only 30 minutes ago. We barely have time to get you out of this building alive, let alone this country. The revelation that assassins, or agents of a usurper, were already en route to my wedding reception detonated in the silent ballroom like a grenade. The carefully constructed facade of propriety shattered instantly. Guests began to murmur, pointing nervously at Rhys's imposing uniform, then at Eleanor's hysterically pale face. Liam, bless his architect's pragmatism, went into immediate crisis mode. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes blazing with a frightening mix of fear and fierce resolution. "Clara, we need to move now. Is this true? Are you saying we have to run from assassins?" Before I could formulate a response that felt like tearing my own history in half, my mother launched herself forward again, but this time she wasn't pleading. She was desperate, calculating, and terrifyingly unhinged. "No! You absolute fool!" Eleanor screamed at Rhys, tears streaming down her face. No longer the elegant grande dame, but a woman fighting to keep a monstrous secret buried. "You cannot take her. She is mine. She is Clara Sterling. She belongs here. If they take her, everything your father built for us, the protection, the wealth, it all vanishes. You don't understand the treaties." "I understand regicide, madam," Rhys countered coldly, stepping between Eleanor and me again. He made a sharp, almost imperceptible gesture with his chin toward the ballroom doors. "The extraction plan is initiated. Your cooperation is appreciated but not required. We need to secure the exit route immediately. Your Highness, please, we must proceed through the service tunnels beneath the kitchen. It's the only route not covered by civilian security." The concept of service tunnels and royal extraction plans was too surreal, too movie-like to fully process, yet the fear radiating from Rhys felt devastatingly real. My wedding day, the supposed zenith of my mundane, quiet life, was dissolving into a high-stakes espionage thriller. Liam looked at me, his gaze begging for clarity. "Clara, talk to me. Who are you? Eldoria? Royal lineage? This is insane." I met his eyes, seeing the love, the commitment, and the utter bewilderment I had just inflicted upon him. It was the cruelest blow of all. "Liam, I swear to you I didn't know. My father, he kept this hidden. But Rhys is right. I have to go." "Go where? With him?" Liam protested, gesturing wildly toward Rhys. "You just married me. You said I do an hour ago." "And I meant it," I insisted, my voice thick with genuine agony. "But if I stay, they kill us both, and they destroy everything your family stands for, too, just for being associated with me. I have to understand what they want, and why my mother spent my entire life hiding me." Eleanor chose that moment to pivot her strategy, realizing the game was up. She stopped raging and adopted a tone of heartbreaking fragility, appealing directly to the one thing she knew controlled me: reputation. "Clara, if you walk out that door with that man, you destroy the Sterling name, the Ashworth name, and Liam's career. The ensuing scandal, the international incident. Think of your in-laws. You will ruin them through association." The pressure was suffocating. Ruin Liam's family by staying, or shatter his heart by leaving with a man claiming I was a fugitive princess. Rhys was losing patience. He glanced toward the grand entrance, his jaw tightening. "Your Highness, we are out of time. I detect increased tension among the catering staff near the west exit, likely the enemy's advance team trying to secure an easy entry point. We must leave now." He took 2 determined steps toward the kitchen entrance, pausing only to hold out his hand to me. My car is waiting 3 blocks over. We have a secure airway prepared, but we need to reach it before they secure the perimeter. Come with me, Princess. Your future, and possibly the future of Eldoria, depends on you taking that hand. The choice crystallized. Safety, duty, and a terrifying, unknown kingdom. Or my husband, my stable life, and almost certain execution by foreign agents. I looked at Liam, his face etched with the pain of a broken oath, and I knew I couldn't condemn him further. I reached out, not to Reese, but slightly past him, toward the kitchen door. Reese, lead the way, but tell me one thing before we step into that tunnel. He inclined his head, waiting. If I am the last of the Viridian line, and the usurper just executed King Theron V, my uncle, why would they send agents to capture me when they could just execute me instantly like they did him? Why risk extraction? Reese's commanding posture wavered for the first time. His eyes widened just a fraction, a flicker of genuine alarm replacing his stoic resolve. He hesitated, glancing back at the gathering crowd, at Eleanor, who was now silently weeping in the corner, and then back at me, his expression grim. "Your Highness," he breathed, his voice barely audible, laced with a terrible certainty. They don't want to execute you. They want you alive because the usurper fears something worse than your death. They need you for the coronation. Because according to the Eldorian succession law, if the true heir is captured and presented at the Citadel before the full council's mandated 72-hour mourning period expires, the usurper can force you to publicly legitimize his claim through a forced marriage ritual. He grabbed my hand forcefully and yanked me toward the swinging kitchen door. And that deadline expires at dawn tomorrow. The force of Reese's pull nearly ripped my veil from my intricately pinned hair. I stumbled after him, the scent of roasting lamb and expensive herbs suddenly mixing with the metallic tang of pure terror. Liam shouted my name, a raw, desperate sound that echoed down the marble hall, but I couldn't look back. If I looked back, I knew I wouldn't move, and the usurper's deadline would become my death sentence. "Service tunnels," Reese barked over his shoulder as we plunged through the swinging door into the chaos of the catering prep area. Chefs shouted in confusion, narrowly avoiding collisions with the armored guard. "Stay close, do not touch anything." Eleanor's despairing wail was the last sound of my old life I heard. Reese moved with terrifying efficiency. He bypassed the startled kitchen staff, kicking aside a stack of linen napkins, and located a discreet, heavy steel door tucked behind industrial-sized ovens. He rammed a slim electronic device against the lock panel, and a quiet thunk signaled its release. "Liam!" I yelled, spinning around, momentarily forgetting the danger, needing to see my husband one last time. Liam had burst through the main kitchen doorway behind us, fueled by adrenaline and disbelief. He was no longer the gentle architect. He was a man fighting for the woman he loved against an invisible enemy. He looked from the steel door to Reese, his eyes blazing. "You leave her with me!" Liam roared, planting his feet firmly between Reese and me. "If anyone is escorting my wife out of this building, it's me. I'll shield her. Show me the threat. I'll fight." Reese took a breath, assessing the situation, the armed outsider, the panicked kitchen staff, and the ticking clock of the usurper's agents. He seemed to weigh Liam's usefulness against his liability and made a split-second decision that confirmed everything I feared about the brutality of this new reality. "Your civilian strength is irrelevant, Mr. O'Connell," Reese stated, his voice dangerously low. He didn't raise his weapon, but the threat was palpable. She needs speed, security, and discretion. You offer noise and vulnerability. Stand down." Liam refused to move. "I won't let you take her away without knowing you're telling the truth." "The truth is that the usurper wants you dead just for having married the princess," Rhys shot back, his hand flashing to his sidearm. "You have 3 seconds to move, or I will neutralize you as a threat to the extraction protocol." My mind screamed. This wasn't a conversation, it was a capture, and Liam was about to be caught in the crossfire of a civil war on another continent. "Liam, please!" I cried, rushing forward and physically pulling him back by the lapels of his tuxedo jacket. "Trust me. I will find a way to come back to you. I swear it. Go upstairs. Tell everyone. Tell them the wedding was called off due to a sudden severe illness." He stared into my eyes, searching for the deception, the lie he'd been fed his whole life. He found only genuine terror and a desperate plea for survival. Slowly, agonizingly, Liam let his hands fall away from his sides. He took one stumbling step back, his face a mask of devastation. "Clara, go!" I shoved him backward toward the doorway leading back into the ballroom. As Liam retreated, turning for one final broken look, Rhys seized the opportunity. He slammed his palm against the scanner again, and the steel door hissed open, revealing a dark, narrow passage smelling sharply of damp earth and ancient stone, the service tunnels. "In!" Rhys commanded, shoving me through the opening. We plunged into the darkness. Rhys didn't bother closing the door behind us. He was already fumbling with a comms unit attached to his collar. The heavy steel door instantly began to cycle shut, cutting off the sounds of the wedding reception and Liam's fading protests. We were moving rapidly through the cramped passage. Rhys used a small, powerful, tactical flashlight, its beam dancing over rough-hewn walls that felt centuries older than the modern ballroom above. "Commander Rhys, to air support," he whispered urgently into the mic. "Package secured. Moving to extraction point Delta 9. Advise immediate deployment of smokescreen to obfuscate the main building perimeter. We have civilian interference that delayed us by critical minutes." My mind was reeling. Package, air support, smokescreen. "Rhys," I panted, struggling to keep up with his long, purposeful strides. "What about the usurper's agents? You said they were already here?" "They are close," he confirmed grimly, not slowing. "We anticipated they would target the front entrances, using the distraction of the ceremony. We prepared an internal countermeasure, but your mother's interference cost us valuable time to set the internal tripwires." We rounded a tight corner, and the tunnel opened abruptly into a surprisingly large underground staging area. It looked like a subterranean garage, dimly lit by emergency lamps. In the center sat a sleek, matte black submersible transport. Not a car, but something engineered for speed and discretion in urban environments, perhaps even capable of navigating water or subterranean routes. Rhys pushed me toward the hatch of the submersible. "Get in! Don't touch the controls!" I scrambled inside the cramped cabin. The interior was packed with advanced communications gear and survival rations. I barely managed to buckle myself into the reinforced seat when Rhys followed, sliding into the pilot's chair. He keyed in a series of rapid commands, and the vehicle hummed to life, its internal lights bathing the cabin in an eerie blue glow. "Hold tight," Rhys murmured, already focused on the forward sensor array. "We are going under the city grid now. If we hit any roadblocks, we go deep, and that adds 12 hours to our travel time, which we don't have." Suddenly, the tactical display screen in front of Rhys, which had been showing a clean green line representing our escape route beneath the city streets, flashed violently red. Alarms began to chirp urgently inside the submersible. Reese swore in his native tongue, his knuckles white on the controls. Impossible! How did they pinpoint our sub-frequency so fast? He slammed his fist on a console panel, bringing up an external visual feed from the submersible's forward camera. The image was grainy, showing dark, muddy water rushing past the reinforced viewport. "They aren't tracking us conventionally," Reese grated out, his voice laced with panic. "They jammed our encrypted signal. They found the tunnel entrance and moved a specialized tracking unit down there while we were still inside the kitchen." The red alarm intensified. A new icon appeared on the screen, moving rapidly toward our submersible from the rear access tunnel, a heavy metallic signature moving too fast for standard city infrastructure. "They're deploying magnetic trackers attached to the chassis," Reese yelled, fighting the controls as the submersible shuddered violently. "They're going to disable the primary propulsion." He frantically toggled switches, trying to override the system lockdown, but the vehicle was sluggish, resisting his inputs. "Reese, what do we do?" I demanded, bracing against the jarring impact as something heavy scraped against the submersible's hull. Reese threw his head back, his face a picture of grim defeat, and then he did something that made my blood run cold. He reached into a hidden compartment beneath the dashboard, pulled out a single antique-looking silver locket, and pressed it hard into my hand, closing my fingers around it. "If I can't get us out of the city grid, Princess," he hissed, his eyes wide with an expression I recognized from my mother's face when she was trapped, "you have to use the emergency egress hatch beneath your seat. It will drop you into the old municipal sewer lines, a maze, but untraceable. This locket is keyed to the royal family's private emergency beacon, but it's a one-shot activation. Don't use it unless you are completely alone and cornered." He slammed a thick metal safety bar across the hatch controls, effectively trapping me inside the small cabin, securing my route of escape should the worst happen. "Reese, what are you doing?" I cried out as he reached for a high-powered magnetic disruptor rifle mounted beside the pilot's seat. "Buying you time!" he roared, turning back toward the rear of the submersible where the impact sounds were now deafening. "I will disable the tracker signal and engage the forward surge drive manually, but I need absolute silence in this cabin for 40 seconds. Do not move, do not open that hatch, and for the love of the crown, do not activate that beacon unless I am dead." The submersible gave a final grinding lurch. The blue cabin lights flickered and died, plunging us into absolute darkness, save for the terrifying red glow of the proximity alarms. Then, a deafening crack echoed through the metal hull, followed by the sound of rending metal and a sudden heavy silence from Reese's side of the cabin. The distinct smell of ozone and burning electronics filled the small space. "Reese!" I screamed, fumbling for the overhead emergency lamp switch. The lamp sputtered on, revealing the horrific scene. Reese was slumped over the controls, his head bleeding profusely where he must have struck the console during the last impact. The magnetic disruptor rifle had fallen uselessly to the floor. The proximity alarm was still shrieking, and the external camera feed now showed the dark, muddy tunnel ahead, suddenly illuminated by 3 incredibly bright, focused spotlights sweeping directly toward the front of our disabled vessel. The unmistakable sound of heavy armored boots splashing in the water began to echo down the tunnel, growing rapidly closer. They weren't just tracking us, they had caught us, and they were breaching the hull, coming in from the front. I gripped the silver locket in my sweaty palm, my breath catching in my throat. I was alone, trapped inside a disabled submersible beneath a city, seconds away from being captured by the very people who killed my uncle. I had to choose: stay and face the usurper's men, or drop into the sewage labyrinth armed only with a locket and the faint hope of rescue. Just as the first heavy thump vibrated against the submersible's front viewport, signaling the imminent breach, I heard a new, chilling sound over the emergency comm system. A voice, calm and utterly devoid of mercy, speaking directly into the submersible's internal microphone. "Royal Guard Unit 3, report status. We know the princess is inside. Open the main hatch immediately, Commander Reese, or we will commence thermal breach." A short, sharp, metallic click followed the ultimatum, the sound of a thermal lance being armed. "You have 10 seconds to surrender the Viridian claimant, or we vaporize the cabin." 10 seconds. The thermal lance charging outside sounded like a monstrous, hungry insect preparing to devour us whole. The air in the submersible cabin, already thick with the smell of burnt electronics and Reese's blood, grew suffocating. I looked down at the locket in my hand, the silver cool against my frantic skin, and then at Reese, still slumped over the controls, unmoving. He had bought me time, but it was running out faster than he had calculated. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat against the encroaching threat. I could feel the vibrations of the enemy's presence through the metal floor. Surrender meant a forced marriage to legitimize a murderer. Fight meant certain death in this submerged metal coffin. I slammed my hand down on the emergency egress lever Reese had so desperately tried to bar. The mechanism gave a strained clunk, overriding the safety bar, a testament to the old, robust engineering of the Royal Escape Pod. Below my seat, the floor hatch popped open a few inches, revealing a gaping black maw leading down into the unknown sewer system. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the silver locket, tucked it deep into the corseted bodice of my wedding dress, the only place I knew it would be safe, and prepared to drop. Just as I braced myself to slide into the fetid darkness, a sound echoed from the main control panel, a weak, rhythmic beep cutting through the proximity alarms. Reese was alive, barely. His fingers, smeared with blood, were twitching near the central command board. He wasn't activating the propulsion system. He was overriding the environmental controls. With a monumental effort that seemed to drain the last vestiges of his strength, Reese managed to smash his palm down on a single, recessed blue button labeled Emergency Purge. Immediately, the submersible began to fill, not with water, but with a thick, white, choking cloud. It wasn't smoke, it was dense, fast-expanding cryogenic foam designed to instantly freeze and render inert any magnetic tracking device or any thermal lance in direct contact. The screech of the charging lance outside instantly devolved into a muffled, furious, grinding sound as the foam enveloped the exterior hull. "Go!" Reese gasped, his voice strained and barely audible over the sound of the expanding foam and the muffled shouts of the approaching agents. "Go now, princess! The foam buys you 60 seconds before they cut through." I didn't need telling twice. I vaulted through the open hatch, dropping perhaps 4 feet onto a slick, slimy ledge within the massive, echoing concrete sewer pipe. The foam was already surging out of the submersible's main cavity, engulfing the pilot's seat and Reese entirely in a rapidly hardening white shell. I looked back one last time, illuminated briefly by the submersible's flickering emergency lights. Reese's form was almost completely encased, a silent sentinel sacrificing himself for a princess he hadn't even known existed yesterday. I turned away, scrambling further into the sewer line. The sound of the external thermal lance roaring back to life was a deafening confirmation that my time was limited. I ran blindly, guided only by the desperate hope of escaping the immediate radius. The sewer was a nightmare. The stench was overwhelming, the footing treacherous, and the echoing sounds of boots splashing somewhere behind me suggested the enemy was already adapting to the foam cover, perhaps dropping in from manholes overhead. As I rounded a corner in the dark, my foot slipped on something slick. I fell hard, slamming my hip against the concrete wall. My breath hitched, and I tasted copper. I must have bitten my tongue. In the impact, the only piece of tangible proof of my lost kingdom, the silver locket, slipped from my bodice and skittered across the damp floor, coming to rest perilously close to a dark, swirling eddy of water leading deeper underground. I lunged for it, my fingers closing around the cold metal just as a beam of high-powered light cut through the darkness 50 yards behind me. "There she is! Stop! Do not harm the asset!" A voice echoed, magnified by the tunnel's cold and undeniably hostile. It was the usurper's security detail. I scrambled backward, gripping the locket, preparing to use it, prepared to scream for the distant, impossible rescue of a kingdom I didn't know. But as I looked toward the oncoming light, I saw something else, something impossibly high above us. A faint, rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack cut through the heavy atmosphere, a sound entirely alien to the mundane city above. It was the distinct sound of rotor blades. As the enemy agents hesitated, momentarily confused by the sudden aerial intrusion, a brilliant white spotlight pierced the manhole cover directly above my head, followed by the sound of metal tearing as the cover was violently ripped away. A rope ladder dropped down, illuminated perfectly against the swirling foam residue clinging to the upper edges of the shaft. A figure rappelled down with astonishing speed, not Reese's stern Royal Guard uniform, but a lighter, dark composite armor, moving with the agility of a predator. The agent landed silently just a few feet from the enemy security detail, drawing not a rifle, but two curved, wickedly sharp blades that flashed under the descending spotlight. "I told you, Commander Reese, that the Ashworth girl was underestimated." A voice boomed down the shaft, a voice that was undeniably familiar, sharp, and dangerously amused. It was Aunt Beatrice. She surveyed the scene, the trapped submersible, the terrified agents, and me, the bride-turned-fugitive, clutching a silver locket. Beatrice snapped the hood of her armor into place, concealing her face, but her eyes, visible through the visor, shone with a triumphant, calculating madness that chilled me to the core. "It seems," Beatrice called out to the bewildered usurper's agents, her voice suddenly possessing an icy authority I'd never heard before, "that this little wedding was an excellent opportunity for a hostile corporate takeover. Eldoria is mine now, and unlike my foolish sister, I know exactly how to handle a royal succession."